Hello, welcome to today's coding tutorial. Today I'm going to talk about React.js unit testing and unit testing in general. I'll be focusing on the code which I wrote previously and will try to cover unit tests for my previous video. So I would highly recommend to watch my previous video. I'm I have provided link for my previous video in the description. So please visit and watch my previous video. It will give you a better understanding of the code which I'm going to talk today, and it will also maybe refresh your memory about how to pass a callback function from parent to child and how to set that relationship. So before we jump into Visual Studio and start writing unit tests, I would like to briefly talk about the functionality which I covered in my previous video. It was a very simple functionality. Like imagine this line, zero number of clicks made on child button. This line is in a parent component and this child button is in the child component. And when I click on the child button, it's updating this line, zero number of clicks to 1, 2 and so on. How the as many number of times I'm clicking on this child button, this number will be updated likewise. So yeah, I covered this functionality and I talked about how we can do this with callback function and so on. Okay, so let's start writing unit test cases for app.tsx. So before we start, let's go through this file app.tsx, and here we can see this is a app as a component, and this app contains something called as parent. And if we go to parent has uh, a line which we saw in the um, in the functionality, that there was this thing, um, zero number of clicks made on the child button, and then we started clicking on the click button and this number was getting updated. So pretty simple stuff here. Mm, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and write tests for this app here. And as I said previously, I mean this code I created based on Create React app, and now that we see we have a unit test case here, and this unit test case will try to run, and this is probably going to fail because we don't have something called learn React and so on. But still, let's try to run the test. And to run the test there are multiple ways. Like we can run with npm run test, we can also write npm test, or even we can write npm t as well. So I'm going to save some keyboard strikes, and let's run with npm t. So with npm t, it found this app.ts test.tsx, and when it is running, of course it is failing because it doesn't find something called as learn React. Sorry. So yeah, let's remove this test, and maybe I will add a test called renders without error. This is a first sort of test. I mean, and you can call this as a dumb test maybe, because this test is not going to do anything, but it's going to render uh, app. Sorry, and that's it. Uh, I mean, the objective behind this test is I just want to make sure that this component is there and it is getting rendered without any errors. So yeah, that's the only objective I have. You can maybe uh, ignore this test with the argument that in upcoming test we are anyways going to cover this particular part. But I just prefer to keep this dumb test, so at least I make sure that like the component is rendering and component, uh, if other tests are failing, then we can say there are some uh, complicated area which we are trying to test and is failing. So yeah, and in general I prefer to write very basic test first and then uh, increase the complexity about in the unit test cases going on. So yeah, okay, so now let's write one more test, and this test we will write like mm, because this app is rendering parent, and parent has this number of clicks on child button, this text. So let's write like should render uh, 0 number of clicks on child button. So this is a text which should be rendered here. So first we need to do react an app, sorry, an app, yeah. And then what we can say is expect mm, what we are going to expect is on the screen. So screen is something which is given by React testing library, and when we are uh, trying to when we render something with this render app, it is going to get rendered on screen object, and we can find this particular information on the screen. So what we can say here is uh, get by text, and get by text we will write in regex form, and the yeah, get by text is pretty much similar thing. So let's put it here, and now this to be, yeah, in the document. Pretty simple stuff here. So yeah, something is missing, and 0 number of clicks. Okay, I'm not sure what's wrong here. Maybe these things, these spaces which I added. So it's not ignoring. Yeah, so it is about spaces. So yeah, and like I said, I mean, in general, any test you consider, the test has three parts in it. So the first part in any test, doesn't matter which language you are writing test, uh, but the first part is arrange. Then there is something called as act, and third part is assert. So in this case, we are not doing any action as such. Like when it comes to act, we can think of uh, like clicking on button or making some action on the my UI, so that we cover that particular flow. So any of that thing we can consider in act. In this case, there is no act, but render is also an act. So we can maybe call this render as arrange an act. So uh, yeah, it doesn't have to be this way. Like we need to write the uh, comments about like what we are doing and so on, uh, but it's better to have this thing in mind, like whenever we are trying to do something uh, in complex test cases, if we start thinking in these things, Like if we first think about assertion part, like what we are going to assert, and then we can go back and think about what actions we need to do, and for those actions what arrangement uh, we should make. So if we start thinking in these terms, writing test cases becomes really easy. So yeah, now I want like to write third test case, and third test case is kind of integration test case. So as we saw, so this particular app is also uh, contains something called a child button. This child, and when we click on the child button, the number of clicks made on child button should be updated. So let's try to do complete arrange act and assert. So let us give me a name here. It should be one, and to be explicit, after child button click. Okay. Now, uh, so again, what arrangement we need to do is we need to render the app. Okay, and what action we are required to do is, for example, uh, we will have a click button here. Yeah, I'll quickly talk about that, how to get it. So as we saw, I mean, on the screen, we will have uh, the object which is getting rendered here on the screen, and then when we want to get something from the screen, we can again write something called as get by role, and this role here will be button, and I'm going to provide the name of that button as well here, and again I'm going to write in regex format. Yeah, that's it. And what we are going to do is we are going to click button, and there is some action on this button called as click, and then what assert part we are going to have here is expect and screen dot uh, yeah, pretty much the same thing. I'll just copy just to save our time. uh, okay, and this should be one actually because we are clicking on the button, but the test is failing. Okay, I got it. The test is failing because the screen is attached to previously rendered object here, this rendering. And when we are doing action, the screen object is not getting updated. And the problem here is it to have this screen object updated, what we need to do is something called as act. And whenever we write this act, the library, this Reactjs library understands that there is some action here which is going to update the screen, and so it takes care of everything and gives us updated screen here. So yeah, as you can see, I mean, as soon as I put this box in the put this particular statement in the act, uh, we have uh, we have the uh, passing test here. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. So I will just spend some time here uh, to give some tips. So first of all, always think about arrange, act, and assert. It has proved for me at least that whenever I get stuck while writing unit test cases, it really helps me. understand when I think about assertion first and then what action I need to do and then what arrangement it requires. It really helps. Second thing, always try to keep our test as small as possible because test case shouldn't test, one test case shouldn't test a lot of different scenarios. It should be one test case per scenario. And this really helps, to write the test case as well and the assertion part as well. And even if something is failing, it is easy to catch in this case. And third thing is we should name the test case as close to the functionality we are testing as much possible. And the reason being that whenever somebody is reading it here, like should render one number of clicks made on the child button uh, after child button click. So this statement itself talk about what might be going on in the test case, and the person who is not aware about code, he need not require to come here and see what's going on. So that's why these names are really important, because if I name something like should render text message correctly, for example, it doesn't make any sense, like what is the definition of correct message and what is the action we are expecting here. So to be just as close to the functionality, I would highly recommend to write the test names as descriptive and as close as much as following the functionality which we are covering in the unit test case. So yeah, that's all I can talk about. With this test, I don't think we can add any more test case for the app component. So I think that's all for the app test, uh, app component test at the moment. Okay, so now let's move on to parent component. And we need to add a file here called index.test.tsx. So here, let's first try to write a simple test case which will cover renders without error. And yeah, once again, it's going to be pretty dumb test. Uh, yeah, and here I'm going to refer parent. Okay. So this test should pass. As you can see here, like the test is passing. Pretty simple test. So second test, again, what I'm going to make sure here in the component, it has this particular line, number of clicks made, and this particular button. So let's see, and let's write a test that this component should render uh, like this text, uh, zero number of clicks and child should render text and button. Okay. uh, yeah, so we can actually split this test as well, but I don't think so. I mean, it's not much of functionality, so we can keep it for now together. uh, so I'm just maybe being lazy. I just want to, I just don't want to create new test here. It's not about laziness as well when I'm thinking, like you know so uh, it doesn't make any sense to like create two separate tests in this case, because they are pretty small. So okay, uh, let's do get by role, and here this will be a button, and we will give a name of button, sorry, name, and this name is child button, and I want that to be in the document. Again, it's very simple thing here. Okay, seems to be failing. Okay. No, it's not failing actually. Uh, yeah, it should be passing now. So yeah, perfect. Uh, and okay, I will just separate this test, and I'll just remove this part and child button. Okay, should render child button and should render text, and we'll remove this part, and here we will write get by text, and the text here would be this. Okay, so yeah, there are 6 tests passing, and we can see this test we just wrote as a separate thing. uh, yeah. mm, though it is really very simple part, like child button and the get text, but yeah, when I rethink about it, I thought like maybe it makes sense to uh, divide it. So I divided it. I divide these two different things. Mm, so I think that's all we can write in the parent component, because parent components uh, job actually is to update the component itself, but that we tested in the app already, this app.tsx. We clicked on the button in this test. We clicked on the button and we saw this callback function, and everything seems to be working correctly, but in the parent it's uh, in general it's just the uh, view part. No action is getting made as such on the on this particular thing here, and whatever action was there we tested already in the app. So now with this we can go to the child part, and here in the child also we need to create a new file called index dot test dot sorry test dot tsx, and here as well I will write something called uh, renders without errors or error, and yeah, this is the thing. Okay, and what it should do is it should render, and this render would be child. Okay. It doesn't find child. It should be. Okay, now wow, it's passing. I don't know how it is passing. Okay, the problem here is it will not pass this way. Okay, let me test once again. I'm wondering how come this is passing. Okay, but nevertheless, the problem here is that this child component cannot be rendered this way, but it should have something called as click callback. So let's write click callback, and this callback would be something like this. Pretty simple callback. Uh, yeah, but this is really important part in this test. Okay, with this understanding, again, let's visit this child file. And what the file is doing is actually it is like some styles here, and then uh, we have child callback. And this child callback basically should be a part of this button. And when we click on the button, this callback should be called. So uh, maybe we can test this functionality here. So let's go and test. Should call uh, provided uh, should call a maybe callback function coming from props. So uh, like the name suggests here, so whenever we click on the button, so sorry, should, or we can write it in when child button is clicked, a callback function coming from props should be called. Okay, so simple thing, and now let's render the child. Okay, uh, render, we have rendered the child. Of course, the child cannot be rendered without a callback here. So let's provide a callback, and then what we want to check here is the function which we are providing here is getting called or not. But this cannot be done, like this expect cannot be checked if we provide something like this here, because we cannot track this anonymous function. And simplest possible way to do this is we can create something called as mocked fn. Okay, this is mock function, and mocked function can be provided by just like just is a part of this React testing library. So what we can do, we can pass it here. And now so this part we can definitely call as arrange now, because we are uh, arranging some mocks here, uh, and then what we are going to do is we are going to const and or even we can directly click the button. So maybe let's go to screen, uh, not this screen but here, let's add a screen, and now screen get by role and button. Honestly, I can skip this name and all this part which I'm writing, because there is no point in, I mean, at the moment there is no point in mentioning this button name and everything, because there is only one button, and even if we find this button, it will find the correct button which we are expecting for here. But uh, I just want to be explicit in this case. I don't want to create any confusion. So okay, so what it will do is it will click on this part, and then we need to check uh, a mocked function has been called, uh, to have been called, to have been called. First of all, it should be called, and then we can also check to have been called times one. So with this, I mean, what we are checking is like this button is clicked and the button has been called, and it should be called only once. So if we see, if I do it twice, this test should fail. Exactly. And because we are just calling this button once, but if we do something like this, then this test should pass because we are clicking this button twice. So pretty simple thing. We can, and yeah, this thing we can definitely call as act, and the last part is assert here. So yeah, that's how I see it, and it is like only once we are calling, so once. So that's pretty much I can like we can write test for this child button. uh, Again, this test is pretty much we are testing the framework here because uh, however this function is provided by us, but it's pretty much React's functionality. Like whenever we are putting anything inside on click, this should be called. But yeah, I mean, this test is not completely waste of time because at least it is checking if we are calling this function correctly and so on. This we are mentioning the same function which is coming from props and all. So yeah, it's good to test this thing. uh, but sometimes I have seen like people testing uh, the React functionality itself, like if the click is happening or not and so on. uh, but click is going to happen if click is made. What we should be testing is if the click made is uh, calling a right function with right params and right number of times and so on. So yeah, that's all I can say about this child component. So we wrote pretty much uh, all the tests which are required for this particular functionality. You can revisit all the tests I covered here. Check it, read the code again. I'll be putting this entire code in the GitHub, and I'll provide the link of the code in the description. So do visit GitHub as well. And if some part is not clear, maybe watch it again. Uh, and still, if you think I can explain some part better, please mention that in the comment section. I will make separate videos on that part and so on. So yeah, let me know your feedback because your feedback is really important for me. uh, and I hope this particular tutorial will mm, uh, help you increase your understanding about unit test cases, and you will write better test case when you're working on your projects. uh, yeah, so that's all about today's coding tutorial. In the next coding tutorial, I will be writing test cases for again the similar functionality, but I will be writing snapshot tests at that point of time. Let's see how many snapshot tests we can write for this particular functionality. I don't think much, but whatever I can think of, let's write those snapshot tests in my next video. Uh, so yeah, uh, that's all I can say at the moment. So um, thank you, and keep watching these kind of videos. So in the end, I would like to remind you to like and subscribe this channel for more coding tutorials. Thank you.